All right, Alexander, let's talk about the reaction in the UK, in the UK media, maybe in the UK, I guess, liberal establishment, you would say, with what is going on, not only in Afghanistan, but what is going on with the support for the current administration in Washington, the Biden administration. And it looks like that support in the liberal media, in the liberal establishment media, and the liberal establishment class has completely collapsed. And I don't know if you want to read the excerpt that you sent me before we started this video, or if you want me to read it, but I think we should read that excerpt from The Guardian, which really is, it's incredible to read such a thing from The Guardian. So I don't know if you want to read it, Alexander.
No,
and we can take it from there.
I think you should read it, and I will explain briefly that in Britain, there has been no louder cheerleader of Joe Biden than The Guardian. The Guardian is, in Britain, the absolute centre of liberal, neoliberal, left of centre England and of Britain. I mean, they are absolutely supported Biden. They played an absolutely central role in disseminating all the Russiagate material about Donald Trump. They backed Biden fiercely during the election, and by the way, also during the nomination process. They spoke up for Biden at every turn. So now they've turned on him, and they've turned on him in a savage way. So I think, Alex, you should read it, and I think our viewers should hear what The Guardian has to say.
Okay, so the title of the article, and I'll put a link for it down below, is The Observer View on the Resurgence of the Taliban, an Observer editorial. And it has the excerpt, Afghanistan has humbled the U.S. and empowered its enemies. Now the West must engage with its new rulers to avert an even bigger threat. And here is the excerpt that we're talking about. Shattered too, and perhaps permanently, is another grand illusion, that of the wise, all-seeing, empathetic Joe Biden. A reassuringly familiar figure, an old foreign policy hand, Biden surfed into the White House in January on a wave of anti-Trump emotion. For the first few months, he enjoyed an easy ride. Now his calamitous Afghan miscalculations and hard-faced responses have slashed his approval ratings, harmed U.S. global leadership, and weakened his ability to pursue domestic reform. Hubris always has a price. Hubris always has a price.
Whose hubris? Whose hubris is being referred to here? Yours? Mine? Biden's? The Democrats? Or perhaps The Guardian itself? I should explain to our viewers, by the way, that The Guardian ought to be The Guardian, when it publishes on Sunday in Britain, for historic reasons, refers to itself as The Observer, but it is in fact The Guardian that we are talking about. So, as I said, hubris on whose part? And when they talk about anti-Trump hysteria, who orchestrated that hysteria? Who organized it? Who arranged for it to be, cranked up to those incredible dimensions? Who played up every single Russiagate allegation you could think of? Who employs Luke Harding? Who employs Luke Harding, who spread all those stories about Russiagate and who continues to plug Russiagate even now?
And about Assange.
And about Assange and about everything, making up stories that Paul Manafort met with Julian Assange at the Ecuadorian embassy, despite, all those US security people and British security people keeping an eye on everything that he was doing. So, I mean, as I said, I come back. Whose hubris? Our hubris? We were saying the truth about Biden all that time. We were saying that this man is simply not up for the job. And if it was The Guardian and no one else, well, no, lots of other people, but The Guardian and the Liberals who were promoting him relentlessly and who now say that this is some illusion. Not an illusion for us.
What happened to The Guardian? At one point in time, it was a very respected publication. What happened to them?
Goodness knows. I have no idea. There's been all kinds of stories. There's been some suggestions that they started to receive money from people like George Soros. I don't know whether it's true. No way of knowing it. Can't verify it. But I can remember exactly when it began to turn. It began to turn sometime in the 1990s. And that was, of course, the heyday of Clintonism. And, of course, it was the time when Blair became Prime Minister in Britain. And The Guardian and The New Statesman, which is the other left liberal magazine in Britain, which had also promoted, left-wing causes in Britain for so many years, it too, at that precise point, became a kind of mirror image of The Guardian and repeats the same sort of arguments that you also hear. Note, by the way, and since we're talking about The Guardian, of course, it ran a relentless campaign against Jeremy Corbyn when he was leader of the Labour Party. Never at any point, not in a single article that I've read anywhere in The Guardian, has it admitted that Jeremy Corbyn on Afghanistan was right. He was one of the people who opposed all those forever wars, and they've never mentioned that. I've never seen a single admission that he got it right, they got it wrong.
Okay, I was thinking to myself yesterday, I was walking around the city doing videos, and actually I was thinking to myself, it was after the story.
As I am about to do also, by the way, just saying.
That's right. And I was thinking to myself after the story broke about Biden got the facilitator and the planner, two guys in eastern Afghanistan. I was just kind of thinking about that story. And I thought to myself, he was meeting with the Israeli prime minister, and then they started talking about Iran. And if Iran doesn't fall into line with the JCPOA, and then Biden said, we have ways of striking at them. I'm paraphrasing. He was talking about a military pressure, military strike against Iran. And I thought to myself, it's interesting. Biden's weak. He's alone. He's obviously trying to figure out what to do, confused. He may not even know what's happening to him. But there's no doubt that the faction in and around Biden, and there is a Biden faction in the Democrat establishment, that they're going to think to themselves, well, we have to give a war somewhere. And I think to myself, the media, without a doubt, regardless of which faction is in control, whether it's the Clinton faction, the Obama, the progressives, the Biden faction, they're going to want a war somewhere. They're going to want that, as well as the military-industrial complex. Is it the same in the UK? Are the Tories, are the Labour Party, is the media also going to put pressure on the U.S. administration, on the Biden administration, and start to say, okay, we left this one place. It's a complete mess, but you know what? You owe us a war. You got to give us a war. The deep state, the military-industrial complex, are they going to operate in the same way, you think? Or are they going to say, you know what, we got to start distancing ourselves from all this stuff?
No, I think they're going to push for a war. They're going to push for a war very hard, and they want a war. And I have to say something straight away. If you read the media commentary in Britain, if you listen to all these furious, enraged MPs and political figures and commentators, what they are absolutely enraged by in Britain, and also I think in the United States, is not the thing that we have criticised, which is the botched, bungled, incompetently managed, chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. They are furious about the fact that the United States is pulling out of Afghanistan. That's what really angers them, the fact that this forever war is coming to an end. Blair, of course, has said that we should not use the word forever war, and using the word forever war is imbecilic because, of course, he wants forever wars to go on forever. And that's what the media wants. In my opinion, both in the United States and in Britain, by the way, and in my opinion, we're in a very, very dangerous moment now because, on the one hand, there's no doubt at all that seeing the chaos in Kabul airport, seeing the way in which this withdrawal has been mismanaged, enemies of the United States, and the United States has enemies, have been emboldened. So we've seen what ISIS, Daesh, call them whatever you like, what they've been doing. I mean, as we're making this program, they're firing rockets at the airport, Kabul airport. The United States is intercepting them, but there's all that going on. And, we get news that North Korea, for example, is on is now going to reopen its plutonium facility, its nuclear facilities. It's going to start doing all sorts of things. So there's going to be people who are going to test the United States. And at the same time, we have people, the liberal interventionists, the neocons, those sort of people, pressing the United States to take strong action because they feel they are owed a war, as you absolutely correctly and perfectly put it. And finally, we have the Biden faction, and not, by the way, just the Biden faction, but in my opinion, the entire Democratic Party, or at least its leadership, which is now desperately looking for a way to shore up their position in the United States. And it seems to me that they're more likely than not, in circumstances like this, to give the neoliberals and the neocons the war that they want. So we're in a very dangerous moment, much more dangerous than people realise. I think that there is nothing more dangerous than a neoliberal neocon administration, which has been routed and humiliated and is in retreat, like the one we have at the moment. So this is a very dangerous moment, and I think things could turn out extremely badly. But Biden himself, I think, is finished. I think they will never trust him again, and they will be looking to get him out of the way as soon as they can, to put somebody they can trust and rely upon to take his place. And that's, I think, a given also. So dangerous situation, but also one that's not going to help Biden, whatever he does now.
We documented a lot in detail during the entire Russiagate fiasco, the Russiagate lie, that how connected the UK deep state was, and the UK intelligence agencies were to the United States intelligence agencies and the US deep state. What should we be on the lookout? And I'm saying that because we shouldn't underestimate the power and influence that specifically London, that area of London, Cambridge, Oxford, all this whole area, massive area, big area, populated area, the influence that it has on the world stage, and specifically in the halls of power in DC. What should we be on the lookout from publications, people, statements in the UK? Is there a neocon group of people?
Yeah.
Are there NGOs? Is the Tory party more neocon? Is the Labour Party more neoliberal? I mean, you mentioned Blair, and obviously we're all watching and looking at Blair, and I think we're all a little bit uneasy that he's crawled out from under his rock and he's reappeared. But is there anything else we should be looking out for? The BBC, The Guardian?
Yeah.
How do you see this as far as your research and your analysis?
Right. To take the political class, first of all, I mean, they are completely captured by neocons and neoliberals. The Conservative Party is dominated by its neocon faction. The Labour Party is dominated by its neoliberal faction. There are more anti-war people in the parliamentary Conservative Party than there are in the parliamentary Labour Party. But if you're looking at the grassroots, I'd say there are more anti-imperialist people still affiliated with the Labour Party than they are with the Conservative Party. But in terms of the political class, they are all united to all intents and purposes around this. There are some anti-war voices in Parliament, but they have been completely sidelined. And it was striking that when the House of Commons had that debate on the war in Afghanistan 2 weeks ago, none of the people who spoke out against the war were called to speak. I noticed, for example, that Jeremy Corbyn, who is still an MP, was not invited to speak. No members of the Labour left were called to speak. It's known that one particular Labour MP, Clive Lewis, who was a former British soldier who turned against the war, he wanted to speak and he wasn't allowed to. And it's a fact, an indisputable fact, that there are many Conservative MPs, particularly, dare I say it, on the more right, libertarian wing of the party, who are also opposed to wars, and they weren't called to speak either. So the people who run parliament sideline these voices, and there are not many of them anyway. And what should we look for? I think it's very straightforward. When we start reading in The Guardian and The Observer and in the BBC and wherever some great humanitarian story, some story about some wicked regime somewhere around the world oppressing someone, when we read about how the leader of that regime is a maniac, a monster, mad, irrational, a psychopath, whatever, that's when we need to be really careful, because that is the language that's always used in the run-up to a war. And it could be used in Iraq against Iran. It could be used, dare I say it, against in Ukraine against Russia, with Putin being the target. It could be used in all sorts of other places, and of course it could also still be used in Syria too. So if we see this language and this kind of reporting, this very emotive reporting starting to appear, that has to be a major warning sign that a war is coming.
Okay, we'll leave it there. You mentioned some countries. Those the countries that you're focused in on?
The other one at the moment, I'm going to make a guess, is Taiwan. And the way that would work is as follows. Big stories about wars, about oppression, Chinese oppression in Western China. I'm not going to name the region of China because, well, we know what the reasons for that are. But, the emotional reporting about that, emotional reporting about Hong Kong, and talk about Taiwan finding itself under threat. And that's the most dangerous place of all, actually. But, that's a difficult one for them to do as well. I mean, they may be scared to take on the Chinese, but Africa is the other place that there's a lot of talk about now. And I've been reading all kinds of things
North
about
Africa. Yeah.
North Africa, and all the way extending into Nigeria, which only has 200 million people, remember? So, we're going to go into there and try and pacify Nigeria and all that. That Mali, all those sort of places. The great advantage from the neoliberal mindset about waging a war in Africa is they think it's easy. They think these are soft targets. And of course, the other country we need to be very careful and keep an eye on is Turkey. And we also know that John Bolton has already gunning for Erdogan and is looking to achieve some kind of regime change there. So, but I think there would be, again, issues about waging a war against Turkey. But Africa is certainly a possibility. Iran is a possibility. Syria might be another possibility. And of course, there's also been talk about some crazy, strange, weird, bonkers things said about Ukraine recently. So if you're looking at a war, Africa is perhaps the most likely, but other places are certainly possible.
For Africa, because I think we've been talking about doing a video on this as well. You mentioned Nigeria. I said North Africa. Are you also maybe looking at what's going on in Ethiopia as well, or is that something
Absolutely.
that the neocons are going to want to stay away from?
No, they don't want to stay away from it. And I mean, one of the other things is, which I hadn't realized, is that there's a geopolitical dimension to this conflict also, because the Russians and the Chinese have been quietly backing the Ethiopian government against the Tigrayans. So, this is, quite possible, heroic Tigrayans fighting the evil Ethiopians. Let's go into Ethiopia and wage some kind of regime change war there too. Not impossible. And lots of talk about how Ethiopia is an empire which needs to be, broken up because it oppresses the people of that country. And so, Ethiopia is a distinct possibility. But, there are other places too. Mali is another one.
Where France was.
Yeah. But this. I can already see some of the coverage talking about the need to wage some kind of campaign and to refocus on Africa. There have been some very interesting articles in the Times of London, for example, talking about how Africa is now the latest place where there's a crisis. What the neocons and the neoliberals want is an easy war, so that they can get themselves a victory and think that they can get this thing moving again. And Africa might, in their own fantasies, provide them with an easy war. Of course, it's not really an easy war at all. You can go in, you can drop lots of bombs, you can kill lots of people, you can achieve, what superficially look like easy victories. But then, as Afghanistan shows, and as Iraq also shows, and as Libya shows, the price then starts being paid afterwards. But of course, from a neoliberal, neoconservative point of view, it's winning quickly and getting all the headlines and talking about the West's strength and its power. That is the important thing. They don't care about what happens in 5, 10, 20 years. What they want is a victory now. So, a nice little war in Africa might suit them perfectly.
Yeah, but Clinton tried that in Somalia, did he not?
Absolutely.
And it did not.
No, it didn't go well. That's a completely different thing, because, of course, they might find that actually this nice little war that they think they might get in Africa isn't actually going to be an easy thing for them at all. So it could go hideously wrong right from the outset. I mean, there was that film, wasn't there, about Somalia? Black Hawk Down.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's a good film, by the way. But I mean, there's lots of things could go wrong. Any number of things could go wrong. But since when has that ever deterred the neoliberals and the neocons from starting a war? And at the moment, they want one.
Right. We'll leave it there. Locals, the Duran.locals.com. Please support us there. Join us there. A lot of great stuff is going on there. And Alexander Mercouris is also posting all kinds of the articles that you're reading and you're researching. And it's really interesting to see the news sources and the publications that you're
absolutely
that you're using many times to put together your analysis. So I think that's an interesting insight. And the Duran, I already said the Duran. The Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code Real News, and our great new media platforms: ODYSEE, BitChute, Rumble, and Super U. I think you have some Duran gear there.
Absolutely. See how beautifufully color coordinated I am. Awesome. With a marvelous Duran hat and a Duran t-shirt. So there we go.
Absolutely. All right, everybody.
The best you can buy. The best you can buy.
Fantastic merchandise. You'll find the link to everything down below. Take care.